Good evening, Year 9 students and your parents and carers at home. As you can see, I'm at my own home here recording the information for you regarding GCSE history and to give you some key information on whether it might be a subject that you would like to take for GCSE study. I'm going to start by just giving you an overview of the actual course, the 3 papers that you will cover and the 4 different topic areas that we study throughout the 2 years. There are 3 exams by the end of your second year at GCSE, by the end of year 11. One is paper 1, which looks at medicine in Britain. That's worth 30% in total. The second is split into 2 different sections. There's one section on Anglo-Saxon and Norman England, so looking at why William won the Battle of Hastings and what happened next. That's worth 20% of your final grade. And then there's American West, which looks at the impact of settlers' lives in America and how that destroyed the Native American traditional way of life, and that's also worth 20%. Both those period studies come in the same exam, 40% in total. The third paper that you study is the paper 3 exam, and that's worth 30% overall. It's one exam really, but we look at 2 different topic areas. It's the USA, conflict at home and abroad. So the conflict at home is the civil rights movement, looking at the work of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Rosa Parks. And the conflict at abroad is looking at the USA's involvement in the Vietnam War. I'm going to go through each of those exams in a little bit more detail now and give you some information on what you'll actually cover. The first paper, Medicine in Britain, is absolutely perfectly designed for 2020-2021. There is no better time to study the history of medicine than now. And the key issues that are facing our country at the moment, we look at some of the origins of that and how they were dealt with in the past. We start by looking at medieval medicine, when there's some very weird and wonderful ways of trying to treat and cure people. And we look at what their understanding of disease and illness was in the medieval period and how that changes as time goes on. So we look at the work of Edward Jenner, who designed the first vaccination, and we look at how the government attempted to roll out that vaccination in order to eradicate smallpox. We're able to make real distinct comparisons to what we're looking at the moment with COVID-19 and the search for the vaccine and the implementation of that vaccine. So there's lots of opportunities to put what you have experienced through the lockdown period into your studies to try and understand the causes for and the consequences of some of these key developments. As well as looking at vaccinations, we'll also study some real modern developments, including the discovery of penicillin, the impact that that had. We'll look at the NHS and how that made a real difference in trying to treat people and also to prevent lots of disease and illnesses occurring in people. And we've got a much better life expectancy now in 2021 than we certainly had in earlier time periods because of those key developments. We'll look at some individuals like Florence Nightingale and the work that she did to improve hospitals and nursing care, and we'll also look at some key epidemics that have happened in the past, including the Black Death, the plague and the cholera epidemic. As part of that medicine paper as well, we also do a case study on the experience of soldiers in the First World War on the Western Front. Medicine had to quickly catch up during the First World War. We'd made some key discoveries by then. We knew that dirt and bacteria caused infections, and we were able to perform x-rays and some operations. We knew that the environment around those operations needed to be sterile in order to make sure that that operation was successful. However, when the First World War happened and the nature of that war, the fact that it was fought in trenches, meant that all that went out of the window, and it became absolutely impossible to keep areas clean and to deal with the type of injuries that the soldiers were experiencing, as on any one day of battle there could be up to 60,000 casualties. So what we do is we look at the conditions of the First World War, which you've been doing actually at the moment in Year 9, and we also look at how medicine had to quickly catch up. We look at some of the developments that took place that made medicine better after the war had ended, but we also look at the experience of soldiers on the front line, the soldiers who were fighting, but also the stretcher bearers, the nurses and the ambulance drivers who were part and parcel of that delivery of first aid and care. The focus of this particular unit is sources. So you'll look at a lot of primary evidence, so pictures, diary entries and letters, and you'll look at those in order to decide how useful they are to us as historians. Each of the papers has a different focus. The medicine paper looks at a particular topic, so medicine, throughout a huge time period. The focus of paper 2 is a depth study, and it actually covers quite a short period of history, and it's really important to know that period of history in lots of detail. So the two topic areas that you cover in paper 2 are the Norman Conquest, so looking at why William won the Battle of Hastings, which you've covered lower down school a little bit, and then what happened next and how he has tried to establish control and authority in England. And you also look at the American West. Now, when migrants started to move to America, they filled up the populations on the East Coast, like New York. That was the first place people saw really as they moved from Europe and from other areas of the world. Now, as the east coast of America became overpopulated, they started to search for new land, and they moved towards the middle of America, which had traditionally been the plains, and they moved to the west coast. Now, traditionally, that middle area of America had been occupied by Native Americans, and when the migrants started to move across, it was detrimental for their way of life. It destroyed their traditional cultures and beliefs. So what we do in the American West topic is look at 3 different groups of people. We look at cowboys, we look at Native Americans, and we look at migrants. And we look at how their experience changes as population moves across America and they try to establish a new life for themselves. We look at how their life changed dramatically because of some of these changes, and we look at the government's role in trying to help or stop their traditions and their beliefs from developing. The American West is a brand new topic area for you to study at GCSE, and it's great to try and learn something new, and I think you'll be fascinated by some of the discoveries that you find out. The final paper that you will sit at GCSE is paper 3, Conflict at Home and Abroad, and it looks at both the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. Now, the time periods of this particular exam are 1954 to 1975, so it didn't happen that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Some of your grandparents in particular may be able to remember some of these events as they were happening. Both conflicts, the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War, show a real dark side to American history, and the way that both Vietnamese people during the war and the civil rights campaigners at home were treated was brutal. And during the course of this topic, we'll look at some really hard-hitting images that show us some of the events that happened. The My Lai massacre, for example, napalm attacks, and the treatment of protesters in Selma and Birmingham and Montgomery, and their brutal treatment at the hands of the police. The focus of this particular exam is again looking at sources, so we'll look at lots of evidence from the time. We'll also look at different viewpoints, and we'll decide whether we think that viewpoint is accurate and whether we think it is convincing in telling us the true story of what happened at that time period. We look at this topic again at A level, so if it's something that you think you might enjoy, there's an opportunity to take this topic all the way through to year 13 and really try to find out what happened during that time. I am incredibly biased, and I think the GCSE course is a fascinating one, and I think there's lots of opportunities for you to find out more about an area that you're interested in. There's social history, there's political history, there's military history within the course. It is a difficult GCSE to take though, and our students work incredibly hard in order to prepare for the exams at the end of year 11. There's a lot of content to cover, and there's a lot of things that you've got to remember. So students need to be organised, conscientious and resilient. The picture on the screen is an example of an exam question, and as you can see, you've got to be able to be willing to write detailed and thorough answers. All of the questions on the exam are extended answers, so there's lots of essays to go through. It is important that you've got good literacy skills, because as well as writing up the answers to the questions, we look at lots of primary material. So there's lots of reading of letters and diaries, which will encourage you to be able to evaluate evidence over time. Having said that, we do support you every step of the way in order to be able to produce those extended answers. The pictures on the screen give you some examples of the type of activities we do, and you can see the finished answer in the top right hand corner there. That was the essay that this student was working towards. We've got note-making structures in class to be able to help you find out the key information. We've got some recap activities, some colour coding, and then an opportunity to be able to recall key facts. And all those things combined would help you as a student to be able to reproduce what that student has done there in the essay question. So although it is a lot of work and does need your full commitment, we do support you as best we can throughout the 2 years. It's not just me that thinks history is a fantastic subject to take for GCSE. As you can see from the information on the slide, that universities and colleges also really respect GCSE students. They know that you've had to work incredibly hard in order to get the grade that you have. Russell Group universities, which are the top universities of our country, see history as what they call a facilitating subject. And they say by studying it at GCSE and A-level, it gives you lots of other opportunities to go on to study different topic areas. It also complements a lot of the other subjects that you might decide to take at GCSE. There's lots of links and skills that we develop in history that will help you to form arguments and to reach conclusions and to make judgments in other subjects. As you can see from the bottom there, the course is varied and fun. There's lots of different topic areas that we cover, so there's certainly something in there for everyone, and there will definitely be something that interests you within that 2-year period, and that interest and that enthusiasm will hopefully help you when it comes to revising the key content and to making your flashcards and to going over your mind maps in order to prepare for the practice exams. Certainly don't just take my word for this though. Ask any friends you might have in older years or any siblings about GCSE history and their experience of it and whether they think it might be a subject you're interested in. You can also get in touch with your teacher either via Teams or via email, or you can get in touch with me and I'll answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for listening, Year 9. I look forward to seeing you in my GCSE class next year. Bye.